It's the Bird Emergency. I'm Grant Williams. This is the show where we talk about birds. And not only talk about birds, we're hoping to inspire you to get out and do something when it comes to preserving birds, conserving, preserving, protecting, and learning about birds. And it's in that spirit that I'm speaking again with Birdlife Australia's Tegan Douglas. How are you, Tegan?
Very well, thanks, Grant. Very well indeed.
That's great. Hey, did you know you're one of the most popular guests who's ever been on the Bird Emergency?
Really? No, I didn't know that at all.
Well, I can tell you that there's a very strong lead for the top three, and you are in that group. So,
oh, wow.
So there we go. You must be a good communicator, Tegan.
Well, I'll try my best. Now you've just put the mocker on me. I feel like I definitely need to bring my A game today.
Now, you're all the way over there in Western Australia. And look, you can, if anybody ever looks at this video, I've got my COVID hair, I've got my COVID beard, and we're just hanging out over here in COVID Alley. Maybe 2 weeks' time, we'll be able to have a haircut and go more than 5 kilometres from home.
The progress is looking good. We definitely, as being in a state that's sort of looks to be on the other side of it, it's a really weird feeling. Of course, all our shops and everything still have we're still advised, obviously, to maintain social distancing, but a lot of the shops and banks and places like that still all have the infrastructure to keep you well away from everybody else. So it's really weird to still see that all in place. Actually, it's a really good reminder.
I'll tell you what's really weird is the government going, woohoo, we're going to have a vaccine really soon, end of the year, ooh, and then hearing the epidemiologists go, no, it's more likely 2022. So I think we've all got to cool our jets a little bit and, just get used to it, how it is. Tegan, before we launch into what we're really here to talk about, the whole COVID thing just brought to mind the next episode of The Bird Emergency features a student who has been trying to do a research project on his own in a remote spot, wholly and solely in the time of COVID. So that's just a little tasty taste. That'll be out later in the week. Yeah. Battling on admirably, but he really he had to get a lot of help from professionals already working in the field, but good result in the end.
I'm pleased to hear it. Yeah, it has thrown a spanner in the works of a lot of people's trips. There are a lot of people across the country who volunteer on, or both nationally and internationally, on conservation projects, and we see it as a fantastic way to give back to the world by contributing their time and, a bit of their money and their knowledge and passion to go and monitor fauna and conserve our environment. And there's been a lot of projects that have had to rethink how they can sort of manage that under current circumstances. So good on everybody who's managing to find those workarounds and still get out there and get that info in.
Yeah, I certainly understand the difficulties that people have been working under, because it's certainly been a long haul over here. Now, Tegan, you've just been out doing some field work. Tell us about that.
Well, it sounds like a bit of a flex after you not being able to stray more than 5 kilometres from home. But yes, it was just a long weekend in Western Australia, and I was over on lovely Rottnest Island doing bushbird surveys for the Rottnest Island Authority with a crack team of young, enthusiastic volunteers. It was a wet and windy but great trip.
So what were the highlights, and did you notice anything on this visit to Rottnest? Because you're over there frequently. Have you noticed that the COVID lack of movement, lack of traffic has had any beneficial effects over there?
Not that we've noticed straight up. So, I mean, Rottnest is a very popular tourist destination, and at the moment that's solely domestic tourists, not national or international tourists. Part of the job that we're over there doing is monitoring the bushbirds. So, Rottnest Island, for anybody who's been there, if you've looked away from it, it's got glorious beaches and glorious coastline, but when you start looking at the vegetation, a lot of that had changed dramatically since European settlement. And yeah, since colonisation, that landscape through fire and all sorts of things, it was no longer able to support very big populations of the birds that we used to get there. So the Rottnest Island Authority, since probably I think the late 70s, possibly even earlier, has been undergoing lots of revegetation work. So they they have a nursery on the island. They grow all the seed. They germinate all the seeds, grow the seedlings, plant them out to create habitat for the bushbirds that used to be there. It's a lovely little subset of the birds that you get on the mainland, but there's some quite interesting ones as well. The just plain Jane old singing honeyeater that you get quite widespread across Australia on Rottnest Island. They're slightly bigger than you get them on the mainland. And then there's things like red-capped robin and western or golden whistler that we get out there as well that make it quite a lovely spot to survey. What's
the fairy wren that hangs out on Rottnest?
There's actually not a fairy wren. So it's quite interesting. It has one of almost everything. So there's one honeyeater. It has white-fronted chat as well. They're the most honeyeater you get. But there's no fairy wren. You do get white-browed scrub wrens out there, but no fairy wren.
And how about your tree creeper buddies?
Oh, none of them, unfortunately. I don't think if they had been out there prior to settlement, I don't think they would have survived the clearing. The habitat there was only sort of, a small number of hectares that still had woodland on it that would have been suitable for them. So no, they're solely on the mainland, those guys.
It's not a long trip out over to Rottnest, but do you see anything on the voyage?
You can do. So definitely gannets, which you can usually see on sort of windy days, you can see from the port as well. There is a lovely colony of wedge-tailed shearwaters that breed on the west end of Rottnest Island, so you can sometimes see them flying around during the day. One of the spectacular things that we saw lots of, I know we're supposed to be talking about birds, but there were lots of whales out passing by and breaching, and just spectacular jumps and tail slaps and all of that sort of thing that made it. And we could see them from the ferry as well. So that was really, as well as from the lighthouses, it was really neat.
Is that mostly humpbacks that you're getting on that passage of water?
Yeah, at this time of year for sure. Like I said, ask me a question about birds. When it comes to mammals, I'm not an expert, but there definitely were humpbacks out there.
Okay, well, we'll start talking about one of my favourite subjects, which is getting people involved in citizen science projects that actually contribute to the broader knowledge of the subject matter. And Tegan, what is it we're going to be introducing now?
Well, it is, as it's October, as we're heading into October, the last week of October is National Bird Week, and yeah, it's been on the calendar, it's been on the Australian bird calendar for over 100 years, and because it's National Bird Week, that means it's also the Aussie Backyard Bird Count.
So the Aussie Backyard Bird Count has its own little web address, so you can tell us what that is, Tegan.
Sure, it's pretty easy. It's aussiebirdcount.org.au. And the really nice thing about it is there's also a smartphone app as well, so for iPhone and Android. Yeah, visit it whatever means you like.
And there's a really cool little video which runs you through how to use the app, and it's only a couple of minutes long, and it certainly does the job. It's a very good explainer video. Pretty groovy little soundtrack too. And I'd love to know who put the video images together, because I think that's one of John Martin's wing tags, cockies. It looks like the ones in Sydney that feature often in his Twitter feed.
It could quite definitely be. Yeah, there's some. It's been around for a while, that little video. So
yes, very cool. Now, Tegan, let's go through how the count works. How does we're using the app, but you've got a limited time to do a count.
Yeah, so, well, to start off with, the aim of the Aussie Bird Count is to try and encourage Australians from across the country to get out there and record as many birds as possible during National Bird Week. So in previous years, this would have been a lot of people recording birds while they were on their holidays and travelling around. I think this year we're going to get a really thorough snapshot of the sorts of birds that people are getting actually in their backyards, in their courtyards, from their balconies, within their local parks and reserves. And that's really important. People think that birds that you see every day are not particular, they're common birds. Why should we worry about them? But they, just by having that people power out there, all those people out looking at birds, you're able to, it's really powerful. You can detect, it's amazing what you find when you have all those eyes and ears out there looking for birds. So yeah, as you mentioned, it is science. There is a method to the count, and we ask people to go out and record birds for 20 minutes. That's really easy on the app because it actually has a timer on it that counts down for you. So you just put in your details to sign up. You put a pin on the map to say where you are, and then you hit start, and your counter starts, and you can start putting in birds. It's a pretty simple method, and hopefully it's one that people will enjoy using.
You're a real scientist. I'm a pretend scientist. I say that because I did applied science.
That makes you a scientist.
No, I cannot hold my own against a real scientist. I had 2 questions about the method, and it'll probably turn into more. I understand that the 20 minutes is to help gauge the different species that occur and the density that they occur. But why isn't the aim to do it all at the same time? Because certain birds are more active at different times of the day.
So the reason that we do it for 20 minutes is that, well, for one, it's a nice easy number. It's not too big a chunk of time. It's not too small. One of the really neat things you can do with a 20-minute block is you can look, as when you're analysing the data, is you can look at it after the fact, and it's quite easy to detect changes. Our instinct might be we want to record for longer because we want to get a list of every single bird that we get in that park. However, what's really neat about when you limit the amount of time that you look for, when you limit it to 20 minutes, is when you come back over time. So say if you have something as simple as silver eyes, tiny little fruit-eating songbirds, really quite busy, tend to hang around in groups. If you are getting them in your local parkland, and you used to be getting them and people were getting them in every survey that was done there, so you were getting them in 100% of surveys. If a couple of years later, during the bird count, during those 20-minute blocks that people were recording them in, people were only getting them in 1 in every 10 surveys that were done there, you could then sort of draw a conclusion about how common those birds were in that site. And, if they're going from being present in every survey to only present in 10% of surveys in that same location, then you could say that they'd become less common. If you just had a list that was collected over a really big period of time, you wouldn't necessarily have the same power.
The technology is obviously geolocating you and will be time stamping your activity when you're logged in. To help with some of that comparisons, I was wondering why there wasn't some encouragement to, say, start your count at, say, 7 a.m. so that all the comparison is about active birds in the morning, and then maybe at 6 p.m. and the activity in the evening. Is that just too difficult to get people to commit to that?
It can be. We don't make the assumption that everybody are early birds. We also get a lot of schools that participate as well. So making the app available to be used at any time of day just really helps people to contribute 20 minutes when they've got free time. If you're a birder and you know that birds tend to be more active in the early mornings, then you can do a survey in the early mornings. If you take your dog for a walk to the park in the morning, then that can be your 20 minutes. If you like to sit and have a cuppa after the kids have headed off to school, then you'll be doing that. Then you'll be doing that slightly later. If you take a break from your office day to have morning tea, sitting outside, then that will be your 20 minutes. It's about making it fit in with your schedule. And because we have the number of people recording across the country, if we're really interested to see any differences in the time that people are surveying, the surveys are time-stamped, so we can do that as well. But we want to make it as easy as possible for people to contribute.
And you can do 10, 15 different 20-minute blocks a day if you want.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you can be recording surveys non-stop for National Bird Week if you want. Yeah, that'd be wonderful. I'd say just, maybe pace yourself. It could seem like it might become a long week, but it's nice to do them, to do a couple in your yard. If you, like I said, if you tend to take your dog for a walk down to local parklands, or if you head to the beach, or you've got a favourite little bushland patch that you like to go to, then why not take 20 minutes out of that time during National Bird Week to record a survey then as well? That'd be fabulous.
Now, as you mentioned right at the kickoff, a National Bird Week has been going for over 100 years.
Yeah, it started as just a bird day, so I think it was October the 28th early on was Bird Day. Now we've expanded to a whole week. Before you know it, it's going to be Bird Month, but look, I'm not complaining.
Well, did you know we missed, I don't know if you missed, I missed World Cassowary Day. I would have loved to do a cassowary show. But I'm finding out about all these days after they happen, so I'll put the call out. Please, if you're having a day, let me know, because I want to publicise them and get them in my calendar so I can prepare for next year. I'd love to do a show on cassowaries. No, anyway, I digress. Tegan, what are some of the interesting things or important things that the Bird Count has discovered in the past?
So because it's run at the same time each year, that allows for really nice comparisons. If I know it seems like a really big, long year that we've had, but if we even think back 12 months ago, particularly the eastern seaboard was really dry. We were having bushfires already. There were droughts in the interior of the country, and what we picked up in National Bird Week is that a lot of those species that we'd normally consider arid zone birds or birds of the interior, in National Bird Week, people were detecting them in places that they were very rarely recorded. So things like crimson chats, these tiny, beautiful little bright red chirping feeders in arid Australia were all of a sudden sort of turning up quite close to the coast and in the cooler parts of the state. We were having scarlet honeyeaters turn up. There were budgerigars, all sorts of things. And we knew about that not just because of diehard bird watchers, but because everyday people were out doing 20-minute surveys and were noticing these things coming to their gardens that they'd never seen before. Off
the top of your head, do you know approximately how many people participate?
Last year, I think the number was around 80,000.
That's phenomenal, isn't it?
Yeah, it's impressive. So I think it was 80,000 people, and we recorded 3.4 million birds. The aim this year is obviously you want to go bigger each year. We're trying to break the 4 million mark this year, and that would be amazing.
I'm tipping that because of the COVID lockdown that we've had, and particularly with New South Wales and Victoria having extended periods stuck inside, I reckon that the birding in backyards and the backyard lists and everything that have been going crazy this year will see that number blow right out, which is a great thing.
Yeah, I definitely hope so. If there's one, I suppose, nice thing that's seen to happen with people having to spend more time at home is that they are appreciating their everyday nature. The birds that come and visit their backyards. People are all of a sudden becoming more interested in putting native plants into their garden to support the wildlife that moves through the suburbs. They're starting to notice what they see and hear every day, and I think that's a wonderful thing. We know that connecting with nature keeps us calmer and makes us healthier and happier, and it's not just by walking out and being around nature. Like the physical aspect of it is definitely a really important one, but it's also the mental and emotional health as well. Sitting and watching birds for 20 minutes, if in National Bird Week that's your mental health break, then definitely do it.
Tegan, in the last couple of months, have you been watching anyone in particular with their backyard lists?
You make it sound like I'm a stalker, Grant.
Well, I'm certainly doing it. I've got the Twitter feed going on the phone and on the computer all day, and I'm really impressed that someone's cracked 100 in their backyard.
There's some impressive. So I actually moved house on the 1st of April. I moved to a new house, and of course, being a bird watcher, new house, new yard list. I think my yard list is only up to about 27 species. I'm unfortunately in the middle of the suburbs, and I'm quite strict. If I sort of step onto the road and off my property, then those birds don't get counted. So my list is pitiful compared to some other people's. I think a fellow bird lifer, Sean Dooley, he always gets me with the neat birds that he manages to see and rack up around his neck of the woods.
Well, I'm out here. Sean's lucky being on the other side with more lush greenery within maybe 10, 15, 20 Ks even. Yep. It's concrete jungle out here in the west. Fruit trees, plenty of fruit trees around here. It's a very traditional kind of pave everything, put 2 fruit trees, grow an olive tree, and that's your garden. But I live opposite a park with lots of mature eucalypts, and I'm cheating now. I never used to, but I'm out there with a couple of handfuls of sunflower seed and a couple of handfuls of budgie and canary seed. So they're getting all of the parrots in. We don't have rosellas out here, so that's
okay.
Yeah, so we don't get them, but we get all the pigeons. And look, I'm even liking sparrows at the moment. They're great.
Well, that's one of the things when it comes to the bird count. It's not so much we're encouraging people to. It's called the backyard bird count, but you can really count anywhere. But it's the changes in those common birds that are really astonishing to see. So yeah, you don't need to go for the flashy, glamorous, rare birds. Those common everyday birds are really important to record as well. And I think that's one of the things I find really welcoming actually about the Aussie Bird Count is that one of the really neat features about the app is it actually has a bird finder element to it. So you don't have to feel like you can't contribute because you don't know your birds. You can actually use the search feature to identify, was it a ducky looking thing? Was it a little songbird? Was it sort of a long-legged egretty heron thing? You can put in what colours you saw on the bird and it'll give you suggestions. And I think beginner birders sometimes get a bit maybe perhaps daunted that they feel they don't know all the names for things. But one of the lovely things with the app is that when you go searching for birds is that it also includes what will come up in your results list is also some of the other common names that birds get called. So if you take the magpie lark, for example, so the smaller than a magpie, bigger than a willy wagtail, black and white, quite common suburban bird here in WA at least, and across a lot of WA. It has names, we call it a magpie lark, but it is known by a whole heap of names. So
peewee, mudlark.
Yep, that's right.
Yep.
So if you're searching for that in the app, it'll actually come up. So it's a really nice sort of more inclusive way of letting everybody contribute. So don't feel that you might not know the right names or how to spell them. Have a look and have a go and contribute some surveys.
Hats off. It's a ripper little app. Now, credit where credit's due, Tegan. Who put the app together?
So it's a small company called Planticle, and James Watmuff is one of the lead developers there, and he just does a fantastic job. He's responsible for our Aussie Bird Count app as well as the Bird Data app and platform, and yeah, he's a gun.
Yeah, no, it's a ripper. It's really easy to use, and I need really easy to use things. It's a far cry from the days when I was having to key out ferns from the old-fashioned key. I'm sure you're used to using them.
Definitely. It can be like, I've just got a couple of it can be really daunting if you don't know what you're looking at and your option is to flick through sort of, hundreds of species of birds trying to figure it out. Having an element in an app that can help narrow down the search for you works wonders.
Now, it's a really big time of the year for bird counts. I want to mention for our international listeners that Birds Canada have this weekend their Great Canuck Birdathon, and they've extended their Birdathon promotion because of the disruption with COVID. And it's one of their major fundraisers for Birds Canada. So if you're in Canada and you're thinking, oh, lucky Australians getting to do their bird count, well, you can do one too. So just head over to birdscanada.org and you can get involved with that one. And I've got an interview coming up in the next week or so with the people who are running the Bird Count India. So I'm really looking forward to knowing how they do things there, because maybe there's a little bit less availability of technology in every household, in every village, maybe even in the schools. So it's great to see that the whole world's getting involved in these kind of projects and adding to our knowledge.
Most definitely. And it's only when you start sort of encouraging as many people out in the community as possible that you really start learning lots about these really mobile, widespread species. Now, I'll be tuning in. It sounds really neat.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to the Indian count, because it's a place that I think we're all kind of familiar with, but we're not really familiar with at all. We know about the cricket, and we sort of know a bit about the Indian history and culture, and you know, the whole movies and Bollywood and all that is becoming, it's seeping into our consciousness a little bit. But I think the birds of India are something I know very little about. And of course, they've got the Himalayas, and they've got coastlines on both sides. It's mountains, forests, jungles. Should be amazing.
There's some amazing bird life in India, so it's
Now, Tegan, you're all the way over 150,000 million light years away on the other side of the continent. What are the sort of upcoming events that you've got there, and how are the bird life projects of note going?
Going really well. I mean, like I said, we're fortunate enough that our state restrictions are enabling us to sort of get out and about a bit more. So our BirdLife WA branch is back to its regular schedule of sort of doing sort of 2 to 3 bird walks a week in places mostly around the Greater Perth area, but also sort of throughout the southwest. As we're heading into spring, we have our Carnaby's black cockatoo breeding surveys are going on. We've just recently recorded one of I think possibly the first record of red-tailed black cockatoos breeding on the Swan Coastal Plain. One of our amazingly eagle-eyed local birders picked up some red tails prospecting around a hollow, and turns out they were feeding a youngster, and that's something we haven't recorded here before. So, but we'll be having volunteers heading out all across the southwest, seeing what else, seeing how the breeding season's going for our black cockatoos. Our migratory shorebirds are returning. That was one of the lovely things about Rottnest, seeing some beautifully coloured grey plovers still with their really dark chests, just having arrived from transcontinental migration. But as we head into spring and summer, there'll be a whole heap of shorebird monitoring going on, and that'll be across the country. So there's opportunities to participate in that all the places with coastlines and lakes and river systems where our migratory birds hang out.
Have you had any fires in WA? Because I see on the news, on the weather every day, that there's all these patches of extreme and even catastrophic fire danger. Has the fire season begun over there yet?
Not in the southwest. So of course, the tropical north is a different issue, but in the southwest we've actually had generally quite a wet winter, so we're hoping that'll carry us through. Last year, I mean, obviously wasn't anywhere near as horrific as we experienced on the east coast, but we definitely still had some really big bushfires in the Great Western Woodlands and Stirling Range National Park. But fingers crossed that we don't get a repeat of that this year.
Fingers crossed, and hopefully it settles down in the US and Canada too. That's very catastrophic. Now, the Aussie Backyard Bird Count, the involvement of schools, how does that work and how important is it?
It's super important. So if you're a teacher or any involved or just an excited parent that would love to see more bird stuff happen in your child's school, then there's definitely ways that schools can be involved. They can, if you visit the Aussie Bird Count website, so aussiebirdcount.org.au, you can find some links to resources and ways to get hold of some materials that will suit the age range of kids you're looking at. And yeah, I go out bird watching with kids and it's fantastic. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm pretty good with my birds. Kids have amazing eyesight and hearing, and you don't realise it until you're out and about with them, and they will pick up all sorts of things, and kids are super observant. So who better to get involved in the Aussie Bird Count than a whole heap of enthusiastic, eagle-eyed young bird watchers?
Yeah, get them early, hook them in. That's what we want. When you're working with a school group, Tegan, do you have a kit of binoculars or something that you can sort of share around with a group?
Yeah, most definitely. And that's one of the things that really, I think, opens up bird watching to people. Is having access to some optical equipment. BirdLife WA we do have sets of binoculars of kid-sized binoculars as well as adult-sized ones that we take along when we go and do school visits. And it changes that little blip that's sitting up in that tall tree to being this beautifully coloured creature, or this, you can see what birds are bringing into the nest. You can see, just appreciate the plumage and the eye colour and all of that sort of thing. So yeah, we try and do that as much as possible.
And then you get them all working on the app, and that's screen time that we can all encourage. We can get them off Grand Theft Auto and onto the Aussie Backyard Bird Count app. I'm all for that.
Most definitely. Well, we do what we can, yeah.
All right. Now, Tegan, what's the website again for people to register?
Okay, so you can register at any time. So the website is Aussie Bird Count, so AUSIE, birdcount.org.au. National Bird Week itself runs from the 19th to the 25th of October this year. So you can visit your Google Play or Apple Store via your phone to download the app. You can access that field guide aspect, the bird ID, bird finder aspect at any time of year, but the submitting the bird surveys will be open sort of a couple of days either side or a little bit either side of National Bird Week itself, just to give people some time to get their records in. But hopefully, yeah, we can hit the 4 million. We could push past 100,000 participants. How amazing would that be?
That would be phenomenal. Now, that's the keystone event for National Bird Week with Birdlife Australia. What else is happening in the Bird Week?
There's all sorts of things going on. So one of the things you can do is check out the BirdLife website. So that's birdlife.org.au. We have an events calendar on there, and that should have a whole heap of what's going on. I can tell you that BirdLife WA, I'm running a couple of bird-friendly gardens workshops. There's some walks. There's all sorts of things going on. You should be hearing heaps in the media, but that's nothing to stop you from heading out by yourself as well, or just with a couple of friends or family to do some bird counts wherever you find yourself during National Bird Week.
I'm just looking to see if there's much else. There's a Brisbane one on Sunday the 18th, Brisbane South.
They might be appearing on the calendar closer to the time as well. So, obviously with statuses of things changing across the country as COVID restrictions evolve, it's best to keep a close eye on it and see what's happening.
Oh, but there is a date we should get out there for all the West Australians too, Tegan. Monday, October the 26th at the WA Echo Centre. That's BirdLife Western Australia's general meeting.
Yes, yeah, that's our monthly meeting. So the indefatigable Sue Mather will be talking in that meeting about bird surveys on Rottnest Island. So, yeah, she was over with us on the weekend and she just has an amazing wealth of knowledge. So, yeah, anybody who's listening from WA and is around, and so that's the fourth Monday of the month is when we tend to do those at the Eco Centre in Perry Lakes. Drop on by. It's always informative and lovely and very friendly and welcoming.
And I won't read out any more of these, but there are a number of Victorian outings happening in the country, in the regions, and there's a couple there from Tasmania on the list as well. So there are lots and lots of things to do in October for Australian bird nerds. I'm hoping I can get some more of these from around the world, the important dates. Gee, there's a lot going on. Lots of webinars and seminars. It's great.
It's one of the benefits, isn't it? People have realised that they can ship things online and make them more inclusive to people no matter where they are, and recording things that used to be live events, like recording them for people to listen to at a different time. It's quite neat.
Yeah, well, the tech's making it easy, and, well, all you need to do is devote the time. So stop playing Grand Theft Auto and and stop Netflix binging and start bird nerd binging.
In Australia, October is the perfect time of year to be out and about, and it doesn't matter if it's a bushland, the coast, local lakes and rivers and wetlands. They're all bursting with birds at the moment.
Thanks for popping in with me again, Tegan. What's coming up in the next little while for you in your bird nerd activities?
Well, spring, there's nothing but a calendar of bird nerd activities. There's a whole range of things. I have a trip out to Credo in the Great Western Woodlands. I'm doing a bird ID training course out there. I'm heading out to Air Bird Observatory. I'm running the annual field ornithology course out there at the end of November. I've got to have a trip out to central Western Australia. This is for fun rather than for work, heading out to Carnegie Station, doing some bird work out there. But, yeah, otherwise around Perth it's a flurry of workshops and bird walks and all sorts of things.
Now tell me, what happens on an ornithology course at an observatory?
Yeah, so BirdLife runs, we have 3 observatories across Australia. So 2 in WA, Broome, Ayr, and then we have Blue Pot Reserve
yep.
as well. Yep, and they're all open to the public. Well, obviously border restrictions.
Yeah, except Victorians.
Yeah, sorry. You're welcome, Matt's been. No, hopefully reopen to everybody very soon. But, yeah, all of them run courses on a whole range of topics, not just on bird things. So down at Air Bird Observatory, I know just before I do my field ornithology one, there's going to be a wildlife photography course run by the amazing Keith Lightbody. And, yeah, for me, my course it's about helping people develop their skill set of field bird skills. So we do a whole range of ID, of different survey techniques, different strategies for collecting information, things that we want to learn about free-ranging birds, how we can go about and do that in different habitats with different suites of species.
Do you cover things like what the vent is and what the laws are and what the coverts are and just things?
Yeah, there's a little bit of that, all those specialised bird words that get used. Yeah, we do a little bit of bird banding as well. There's a little bit of shorebird ID. Yeah, a whole range of things. So
fabulous.
So it's a pretty information-packed but also bird-packed week.
That sounds like the kind of thing that you've got to put in your calendar because you need to prepare if you're they're generally a big trip away, so maybe put it in your calendar for next year and try and time it to when somebody is going to be out there doing a course. Are they very regular? Like, I know you're not doing them every week or every month, Tegan, but are there a range of people doing them over the course of the year?
Yeah, it varies. They do try to get a pretty regular course. I think the observatories all have fixed things that are on their calendar no matter what. I know Broome do a wave the waders goodbye and also a welcome back to waders courses at sort of at different times of year, and those are long running things. And I'm sure they'll have the Broome Bird Observatory website will have the dates for the next little bit for those. The one that I run, the Field Ornithology course, that's always the last week of November. There's, the other courses can fluctuate in time and depending on the availability of the course leaders and things. I know AIR has plans to do a birding for beginners course, I think in February or March next year. There's schemes and dreams for reptiles, and they get pygmy possums down. They get western pygmy possums down there. So there's always heaps of feathers and fur and scales to keep everybody interested.
It's a bucket list location for sure, for sure. Well, Tegan, thank you for being so generous with your time again on the Bird Emergency. I look forward to catching up with you again in the not too distant future. Remember, it's time. The weather's picking up. It's time to get out there and do something. And if you don't know what I mean by do something, don't renovate your porch and get a bloody jacuzzi. Put some money into a research project. Carbon offset all your activities. Write a letter to the useless politicians who are helping us clear the remaining habitat for our threatened birds. And take this on anywhere you are in the world. Or get out and get involved in the Aussie Backyard Bird Count.
I definitely hope to see everybody out there at a safe distance, of course.
And shameless plug, if you're actually enjoying the Bird Emergency, retweet, subscribe, share, or review us. You'll be able to do that on the Bird Emergency website in a matter of days. We're about to relaunch it with all the original episodes and whatnot, and you'll be able to hear the first time that Tegan appeared on the Bird Emergency, and we worked out what kind of a bird nerd Tegan actually is.
I think Die Hard bird nerd, was that the...
You're still not at the extreme end of the spectrum though, Tegan.
No.
You're safely back towards the median. So of our small sample size so far, but it's growing. Again, thanks so much. You can, of course, catch up with all of the previous episodes of the Bird Emergency on all of the platforms where you can find podcasts. A bit of a teaser, what's coming up. As I mentioned, we're going to learn about why it's important to count and sample and examine predator poo in a national park. We're going to learn about saving birds when they're migrating or just if they're hanging out in your backyard. We're going to learn about the dangers of bird strike and how possibly 1 billion birds a year are dying worldwide from that problem. And then very soon, 2 of the doyens of the Australian conservation movement. I'm not going to give the names away, but let's just say Island Conservation for one. Let me just say Adani for the other. That should give any clues out there. Thanks again, Tegan. Thanks, everyone, for being a listener.
Thank you, Grant.